His Atlanta architectural firm. Almost a week ago, he left Atlanta to join the crew of a sailboat racing from Miami to Jamaica. Along the way, the boat was seized by Cuban sailors when it allegedly strayed into Cuban territory. Grant and 10 other crewmen on the boat were held for more than 24 hours and finally released. Today, he talked about the experience with Bill Nigut.
I guess the first reaction was probably not printable, but was to say that, you know, they really have screwed up a good race.
Grant and his fellow crewmen on the Brigadoon were picked up by a Cuban gunship last Tuesday night as they tried to go around the island. And just how did Grant know it was a gunship?
I guess it didn't really become apparent till a gun turret on the boat with quads mounted on it spun around and dipped down to us, and then things kind of quieted down. We got the message a little bit quicker that way.
The boat was towed to a small port town called Barranquita. Grant and his fellow crewmen weren't allowed to leave the boat except to answer questions and have their pictures taken by Cuban officials, who suspected they were CIA. Grant says they were never harmed by the Cubans, but they were subjected to what may be a new and subtle form of psychological torture.
To outdo us, they played a Cuban baseball game that ended up 1-0 after 17 innings. That was the longest baseball game I've ever listened to, and they had it turned up so that half of Cuba could hear it.
I asked Grant what he learned from his experience, and he related this incident which occurred on the first night he was held in custody.
They came out and took down the Cuban flag off the back of the patrol boat, this gunboat, and when they did, we promptly acknowledged by striking the colors on the back of the sailboat and immediately stood and sang "God Bless America." We had one Australian on the boat. We had to sing Waltzing Matilda, and after that our navigator was English, so we sang God Save the Queen. And I think that really kind of summed it up. It's still much better being what we are than where we were.
Bill Nigut, Channel 2 News.
Never got it. Another diplomat has been killed this time. Has released 17 Americans, including 2 men from Atlanta who were seized at gunpoint Tuesday night when their boats allegedly strayed into Cuban waters. All were released apparently unharmed after 24 hours in custody. Bill Nigut joins us now with more on that incident and the 2 Atlanta men who were involved.
Wes, Charles Grant and Paul Juergens both work for an Atlanta architectural firm, but sailing is their real passion. And so when they were invited to join a crew racing from Miami to Montego Bay, Jamaica, they both leapt at the chance. But Tuesday night in the dark waters of the Caribbean, their holiday suddenly turned into an international incident. What do you think about all this?
The funniest thing was I said to my husband as he was leaving, "Don't get too close to Cuba, ha-ha."
B.J. Juergens and Patsy Grant could finally laugh about the incident today. Both had spent more than 24 hours waiting to hear some word from their husbands. At 3 this morning it came. The men called home to say they'd been released.
Yes.
How did he sound?
Very tired. I'm just, excited that they were through it all. And we waited because they let the other boat out sooner. And we kept waiting. And then he called, and he's glad they're out.
Grant and Juergens had called on ship-to-shore radio after setting sail once more for Jamaica. This morning, their wives were flying to Montego Bay to wait for them. The 2 Atlanta men had started the race on board the Brigadoon, captained by a friend from Jacksonville, Florida. All of the boats in the race were following a course that took them perilously close to Cuban waters. The Brigadoon and another boat apparently got too close. At about 6:30 Tuesday night, they were intercepted by a Cuban gunship and escorted to port. Because the United States doesn't have diplomatic ties with Cuba, the Swiss government handled negotiations for the release of the 15 men and 2 women aboard the boat. This morning, Patsy Grant and B.J. Juergens said they still had no idea the kind of conditions their husbands were held under. But they both said they'd spend several days in Jamaica trying to enjoy the vacation that the Cubans so rudely interrupted. Wes?
Patsy's a well-known name in this area. Patsy Bromley, the dancer.
Yeah, Terpsichore. She's well known for that, yes.
Also, I talked to her last night, and I know that they took the boat at gunpoint. Were any shots fired, or was there any violence?
The U.S. Coast Guard says that as far as they know, there was no violence involved in this at all, that the 2 boats decided to follow peacefully and did that.
Okay, thank you, Bill.
Thank you, Bill. Well, the Pentagon...